right, and we are recording. Welcome back, everyone. This is the third and final webinar for this particular course, but as a reminder, I know we mentioned this last week, the course will remain available for the next 30 days to complete the capstone project, to also re-engage with any of the resources that were present in the course. I'm certainly not calling anyone out here, but the videos that we posted last week for the 4 Cs as an example, those are hosted on YouTube, so while we can't see who has and hasn't watched it, we can see if people have watched it. And most of the videos only have 2 to 5 views right now. So I'm guessing it's just a very busy time of year. I know we have quite a few folks who work in the world of education. So as you can, just re-engage with those resources over the next 30 days or so to hop in, watch those videos, read through some of those articles as you're working on that capstone project that Amy is helping set up. Hey, thank you, Ashley. I appreciate you reading the transcripts. That was fun. It's been nice to put those together. There was a neat little trick that we uncovered that we talked about last week and are reiterating again this week. So what I'd like to do is just walk you through what's in the course this week as a lead up to the capstone project, and then give you a quick demonstration of some of the things that we're talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera just to help with internet speed. Sometimes my feed cuts out a little bit while I'm sharing my screen and my video at the same time. But I'm also going to share my screen over to the side here. And we'll get Do Not Disturb turned on as well. That way it's just the 21 of us. All right. So in the accessibility course this week, we have 2 primary sections and then the capstone project. The first is a section that we're calling Accessibility Toolkit. And these are just tools and functions and features that we found along the way that we thought might be especially useful in this particular context. Now, some of these have come up before. Some of these we're only introducing now. One of those is Accessibility. We've talked about this, I think, each week, but again, this is not a tool that we provide directly. This is a third-party service, but what we find to be really interesting about it is the interface is a very simple human access icon, and when you click on that, they actually have quite a few different profiles for different types of impairments that might affect a learner's ability to navigate through a site successfully and without particular challenge. One of my favorites is the ADHD-friendly profile, which does things like minimizing some of the animations on the site. It also adds in this nice little focus bar, so it's easy to not be quite as distracted by everything that can be going on in a particular website. If I close this, that makes it a little bit easier to navigate through. And these profiles can be swapped on and off as you need. You can even customize your own with the different features that they happen to have for content adjustments. If you did add something like this to your site, it would retain those settings for the individual users. So as they go between different pages in your site, it would remember how they want the site to display. If they log out and log back in, it also remembers that as well. What I loved about this was it was very easy to quote unquote install. And by that, I mean, it's literally just a little snippet of code that we add into the header for the site, and that shows up on every page on the site. As far as services go, and again, we're not an affiliate with this product. We don't receive any kickback or anything like that. There's no affiliate payment setup that we're engaged with them. It's just a product that I happen to find and like quite a bit. Their pricing is very reasonable for a site. I think it goes up to, I say, yeah, it looked like $3,500 a year, but for smaller sites, the price is still very reasonable for what you get and the level of compliance that it brings. So Accessibility was one of those tools that I know we've mentioned several times that we find to be really, really interesting. Another one that is going to become more and more important as more and more client sites and more folks move to Moodle 3.11. is the Brickfield Education Lab's Accessibility Toolkit, which is a key part of that upgrade. Now, I want to point out, to use this Accessibility Toolkit, your site does need to be on version 3.11 or higher. Right now, that's I think we're up to 3.11.2 or 0.1.
We're at 0.2 now.
We are at
0.2.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Brain, for being right there on the cusp of trying to remember that information. And thank you, Amy, for confirming. The Brickfield Labs Accessibility Toolkit does require 3.11 to run. So as an example, if you're a current eThink client, your site would need to be upgraded to 3.11 before you would have access to the toolkit. Same goes for anyone else on the call. If you're self-hosted, you would need to move to 3.11. If you're hosted through someone else, 3.11. And it also has to be registered. So your site would have to be registered with Brickfield Labs to complete the setup. If you've ever worked with us or independently set up an LTI connection with, let's say, a publisher, someone wants to connect Pearson or Sage to their website, and they get this information from the publisher that says, you'll need this link and these keys. It's a pretty similar process. It's not LTI, but it does involve 2 keys that you'll need to get. If you are a full site administrator or self-hosted, it's going to be in site administration. And then under plugins, you'll scroll down to admin tools, and then there's an option called Brickfield registration. Now, I've actually included a lot of this information in the course this week. So if you read through the more about the Brickfield Labs Accessibility Toolkit book, this information is going to be in there as well, but just so that you've actually seen it. There's going to be a registration link in there that will take you to a page that will then link you to the Brickfield Labs website. You can register your site from there, and they will provide you with 2 keys. So if you were registered, like let's say you're an eThink client, you're on 3.11, you registered your site, just open a ticket, send us those keys, and we can complete the registration for you. Otherwise, you would come back into this Brickfield registration page and enter the keys yourself. It looks like there is a question. I was trying to figure out if Ally was FedRAMP approved, and it's not clear. Does anyone know offhand? Same question with Accessibility and Brickfield. I don't know offhand, but we can look that up for you. Would you be willing to cross-post that into the forum, Ashley?
Ashley, we did reach out to the people at Ally, and they did not get back to us yet. I actually, our leadership actually went directly to them. And so I was just talking to my boss this morning, Mark, and he said, I still haven't heard back from them. He said, but I will go above and find out if I can just go right to their regulatory group and find out more information. So
yeah,
we're still waiting on that. Yeah.
I mean, I tried to Google and figure out, but I don't
couldn't either.
And like, it's, obviously like we're limited by the kind of organization we're in. We cannot like even think about using anything that isn't FedRAMP approved. So, and it looks like all these tools are like, they're kind of newer. And so, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. So he has that. He is still working on that. I meet with him tonight, so I'll be able to follow up with him more on that.
Excellent. Sounds good. That's an excellent question. I appreciate you asking. And I'm sorry I didn't have the answer offhand, but Amy, I appreciate all the work that you're doing to try and find out. With the Brickfield Education Labs Accessibility Toolkit, again, there is a little bit of setup that goes into it. You do have to be on 3.11. I really want to emphasize that point. But once your site is up and registered, then you can begin requesting accessibility reviews of courses on your system. And I wanted to show you what that looked like today. So this is a self-paced training course. Right now, I'm in the process of rebuilding this one. Our self-paced training courses are added onto client sites when we do a site upgrade. This is for the 3.11 one. Over the years, we've had multiple editors in here who have multiple styles and multiple approaches to creating content. So I'm attempting to clarify all that now. I'm about halfway through this course. So my guess is there are probably quite a few accessibility issues that will need to be addressed. So to set up an initial course review here, Brickfield Labs is enabled on this site. It is running Moodle 3.11. So I'm just going to come into the course, and what I'm looking for is that cog in the right-hand menu or right-hand corner, the actions menu there. If you're using a theme like Fordson or something else, you may have to go into a different spot to find this menu, but whichever menu you use to access the course settings, that's what you're looking for. Accessibility Toolkit is going to be located at the bottom. So it's third from the bottom there. And the first time you click on this in a course where it hasn't been set up yet, you'll actually get something that looks like a pretty big warning message. And it's just letting you know that you haven't scheduled this course to be analyzed yet. I want to say my current understanding of this is your site, like your course site, is analyzed within your site. It doesn't send the information to Brickfield and then send it back, so your data doesn't leave. It all happens on site through the Brickfield plugin on your site. So I wanted to be really clear about that. I know there are always concerns about where does our data go, but all we would do on this page is just click this big button that says submit for analysis. And it'll take me back to the course. It's going to give me a little a banner here at the top, and this is a little small on Google Meet, but it says this course has been scheduled for analysis. Analysis will be completed at the earliest by 1:15 p.m. Check back after then. And I want to clarify, the students cannot see this. So anyone enrolled as a student or learner in your course, they do not see this bar. Only you as the instructor or administrator would see that bar. The next thing that I'm going to do while I'm waiting for this course to be analyzed is I'm going to, while I have editing on in my course, I'm going to add the accessibility block to my course site here. So I've got editing on. I'm just coming to the bottom of the navigation drawer, going to click add a block, and it's the accessibility review block here at the top. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And right now it's telling me this course has been scheduled for analysis because the analysis has not completed. It may take a couple of minutes while we're in here, but I do have a backup course that I can show you where the analysis has already happened. So while that's running through, I want to point out this more about the Brickfield Labs Accessibility Toolkit book in the course this week that will walk through each of the steps that we just went to, including the review block, and then what the review block does, as well as the reports that you'll have access to within the course. So let's hop back. I'm going to refresh and see if it's completed yet. Nope, I think it's still running through. I'll tell you what, I'll hop over to one where I have already run this through, and this is just a generic sandbox site. This is where I do testing for client questions. This is a complete course that's just full of all sorts of random stuff that could best be classified as junk at this point, because anything in here could be deleted, and it's okay if it disappears forever. So I wanted to show you what happens when you add in the accessibility review block, which is right here, and the review has been completed. And by default, oh, I can't make it any larger, the block nests to the bottom. By default, after the review, your course is actually going to look like this. And again, I want to clarify, the learners do not see this. The learners do not see this color coding at all. This color coding is meant to indicate, did that section pass the accessibility review check? Did it fail? And if so, how many errors are present there? The yellow indicates, this is something that needs attention, but it's not critical. If it's red, it means that there are quite a few errors within that particular piece of content, and it needs more immediate review. And just to reassure everyone, I'm going to switch my role over to student. And see, it's gone entirely. In fact, I can't even see the accessibility review block. That is only visible to instructors and administrators. So none of that content is going to be present for the learners. This is exclusively for instructors and administrators. So you get this heat map that gives you a color-coded indication as well as labels as to whether a section passed, if it failed, how many errors there are, and what percentage of all errors that happen to be. And then I can engage with the block in a different way. So overall, it will let me know where are those errors primarily. For example, I can see I have 37 errors with my link resources on the site. So those would be things that I need to take a closer look at. I also have 131 errors related to my text. So that gives me another idea of where I could go. If I don't want this heat map, there's a little eyeball here, so I can just click to hide that, hide or show it. And I think because I was holding down plenty of other keys while I was doing that, that wasn't going to work. I can download a quick summary report, which will give me an overview of how my site was assessed, but you can also view that on the reports area. So I can either click this reports icon to view the reports in the toolkit, or I can go back to that gear icon and click on accessibility toolkit, and it will take me to the exact same spot. So there are 4 primary reports that you'll see in this toolkit. I can make this a little bit larger because we don't have any blocks. And the first is the error list. In fact, it will give you a really specific list of every single error that it's found on the site. So in this one, most of my issues are with text. My guess is because a lot of these span tags end up getting put in, but I can review those from here. And one thing that I really do like about this before I hop over to Ashley's question is while you're reviewing the errors here, it'll show you which activity the error is present in. It'll show you which check has been failed. It'll show you the code. And my favorite part about this whole thing is this edit link will take you straight to the editing interface for that particular thing. So it takes me right in there, and just a huge time saver to not only be able to see where the problematic text is, but to go straight to editing. So Ashley, I saw that you had a question, had raised your hand, so go on ahead and
Yeah, I was actually just looking at those specific errors that you're showing here. Like the bold tag, like why would that be in there unless you were like creating raw HTML? My understanding is that like if you were building HTML or if you were building content in the Atto editor, it's going to use the emphasis tag rather than the bold, right?
absolutely right. Yep.
Okay.
It,
So
it will now. It didn't
Okay.
Yes,
before.
that is the
New.
trick. Yeah. So you're the best part about this question is you've brought up a really interesting challenge that comes along with a lot of clients, which is very often they are building on content well over a span of years. And so there were times where the toolbar was probably tiny MCE instead of Atto, and it was using the B tag for bolded text instead of strong, which is the more accessible format. And so when you have older text like that, it doesn't always get updated unless you go in and manually change it. And so what Ashley's referring to right here is in this text, this tag, like the carrots and with the B, that is meant to make text bold. But the more accessible way to do this is to use the word strong instead in those tags. This is pretty outdated at this point, but this text was likely created several years ago before the site began using Atto. And in this particular sandbox, there were times where I can tell that this is from a question bank. My guess is I was troubleshooting question bank questions that had been provided by a publisher. And you also tend to see some challenges when the content comes from a third party that may not have as stringent of accessibility standards with their
that makes
content.
sense. I was just making sure that like, you know, like we tell people to create an Atto, and Atto should not be giving errors like that. And
You're
then the
correct.
other thing too is like the tables. Well, I don't know if this is for your question banks, but we don't get a lot of options to edit the tables in the Atto editor. And I've actually run into trouble before where I have to go in and edit raw HTML in order to make them fully accessible, because it doesn't allow you to adjust like padding and stuff like that. So that's another just curious thing that it's like, oh, I wonder, I mean, I don't know if that's the editor's fault. But then my other question was going to be like, how does something like this deal with math ML or LaTeX or something like that? Like if you're using like symbols, does that make sense? Like
it does. In this particular case, I haven't run it on a course that has LaTeX or any type of special formatting just yet. One thing that I do refer to, and this is going to be a really horrible link to paste on the chat, is the current list of accessibility issues that Moodle HQ is looking at as it relates to Moodle. The reason I'm providing this link is the issues always change and evolve. Some things are resolved, some are abandoned because they're fixed in a newer version, so they don't go back and backcode it. But we find that to be pretty helpful. And if we do find something that is not currently on here or is an issue for one of the clients or we run into, we'll just open up a new report to let them know how to replicate it and what's going on there. So if we do ever find something that's just flat out broken in the core code, or it's just something that needs to be addressed and updated, we usually open a bug tracker report for those since it's an evolving list. Yeah. All right. So this error list is one of my favorite parts of the Brickfield Labs report. Again, having that edit link is just a lifesaver because then you don't have to go back into the course and figure out where was that thing that showed up on the report. There are also two reports that give a more visual explanation of where the issues are. So the first is an activity breakdown, and this is for the types of activities and resources within Moodle. So you have course level, question banks, assignments, then you have labels, pages, quizzes, things like that. So this gives you a visual idea of where do your problems usually tend to show up. In my case, purple is passed, orange has failed. So in my labels, I seem to be doing really good. I have 58 of those, they all passed, but my pages definitely need work. I can see that I failed 14 of those, and I think I've only passed one. So while I'm doing a good job with my labels, I'm not doing a very good job with my pages in this particular course. There is also an option on some of these to show the chart data. So if you didn't want to do with the bar chart, you could actually just see a table with the data in here. So you have a couple of options for how this is displayed. And content types is very similar to the activity report. It's displayed as a donut chart though. And content types focuses on types of media rather than types of activities or resources to give you an idea of where most of your problems tend to show up. So I've got a couple of issues with images, just one there. More issues with links. So it looks like 37 errors. Again, I recognize that's hard to see in Google Meet, so I'm doing my best to zoom in. A couple with tables, but most of my errors tend to be with the text. So the text is where most of the issues are going to need to be addressed. So these are just really quick ways to see where are the primary problems, because I can see, in the activity breakdown that I'm doing a good job with labels, but not pages. In content types, I can see like, okay, whatever I'm doing for images is working really well, but that text definitely needs more attention. And just like the other report that we were just looking at, you can show the report as a table instead, which might be a little bit easier to process. The last one is the summary report. This is a very comprehensive overall report for all sorts of different things. It'll let you know overall how many activities did it look at, what was the pass fail there, what were the most common errors. It looks like the most common errors here were misuse of the bold tag instead of the strong tag to make text bolded. I can also see which activities tended to fail most frequently. Right now it looks like book and then page. And the count is the number of errors, not the number of resources, just to clarify that. It'll also show you your first 30 errors and an activity pass ratio, which I found to be pretty helpful. So this is a little bit earlier, I mentioned when we were looking at the block that you could download a summary report. This is the report that you could download. So if you needed a quick overview of how a course did, like if you were running this for an instructor, you could either on the course homepage, let me open that up in a new tab so we can look at one more time. In the block, you can click this download icon. It will download a copy of that report, or on the summary report itself, you can just click download PDF and it will download that PDF for you. At that point, you can just send that out to someone else. So here, let me go ahead and open this up. Oh, open in my other screen. And again, this was just a generic sandbox, so there's no content that's ever going to be seen by learners here. This is just for troubleshooting, but it gives this quick overview of where some of the errors tend to pop up in the site. So this is about as top level as you can get before you actually dig in and start building some of the, or fixing some of the issues. Let's see. Looks useful, but it looks like it's primarily geared toward course admins. It can be. I do think faculty could find this helpful with a bit more training, definitely. But yeah, I do agree. Initially, it may feel a little overwhelming to faculty, especially if there's not a high level of technical confidence. But once we start to get a little bit more into this, and if you were training faculty / instructors on things like how to actually edit some of the HTML code to update that, and there's actually a way to get around using the HTML. You really just have to reselect the text and then toggle the bold on and off, and it'll reset the code for you. But overall, it could become more and more useful to the instructors. I will say, just a add disclosure, this is essentially a free tier of the Brickfield Labs accessibility toolkit that's been built into Moodle. They do have advanced services that are available for additional funding. If you click the advanced tab, they'll talk a bit about what that looks like. And you can request a demo from there. But we're not directly affiliated with Brickfield Education Labs. This was just a situation where, like with H5P, it was a company that was doing really good work to the point that it became integrated into core Moodle. And my guess is it will be here for quite a while. So I'm only mentioning that because there's no way to hide the advanced tag. You will see that. You will see that there are additional features available that are basically would require a contract and money to be exchanged. But all in all, I do find the Brickfield Labs toolkit to be a really interesting new addition in 3.11, and I'm excited to see what people end up doing with that. So if you'd like to learn more and or have a little review of the reports that we just looked at, if your site isn't able to run this just yet, that's all included in the book in the course. So we have a little overview of that. Some other things in the accessibility toolkit this week that I wanted to highlight, and we won't go into everything. One is the accessibility block in Moodle, which is a way to easily change how text is displayed to learners. This was a block that I'll be truthful, we were a little worried about. This was a block that had largely been abandoned in development, and we were actually starting to take it off of client sites because it had been years since it had been updated. And coincidentally, it was Brickfield Education Labs that readopted this plugin and brought it back. So what this is it's just a little block that appears on the website. I can pull up a little screenshot for you here. And this allows learners to do things like change the size of the text, change the color coding of the text. There are also extra features built in that have a text-to-speech feature, as well as, I believe, a dictionary lookup. So it's a really interesting plugin. This one's totally free, and it can be added by request. If you're an Ethan client, just go ahead and open up a ticket. Otherwise, you would just reach out to your host, or if you're self-hosted, reach out to your admin about installing that one. Relatively easy one to add in, and we're very excited because clearly it's, with it being adopted by Brickfield Labs, it's going to be supported and well supported for quite a while. The other thing that I wanted to encourage is there's a page in here called Use What You Have, and what I'm getting at with this is we actually have a lot of accessibility tools that exist outside of Moodle that we may be overlooking. There are quite a number of accessibility features on your computer, as an example. There are accessibility features on your phone. There are accessibility features with, let's say, the example that I use in this page is Office 365. So if you have an Office 365 account, then you have access to some really interesting tools in there. One of the things that I like to do, I can't remember if this works on Google Meet or not, but on Mac OS X, there's a zoom feature for those with visual impairments that lets you zoom in and out. We'll see if this, I truthfully don't know if this is actually working right now, but I've just zoomed in using the zoom feature. And what I like about this is if I'm doing demos and the software that I'm using happens to support this, I know it works on Zoom at the very least. This is an easy way for the people to actually see what's happening on my screen without me having to make the text so large that it just breaks in really weird ways. So it's just a simple way for me to zoom in and out. Let's see, it looked like there was something else. So you love the transcription option in Office 365, but you're still running 2013. Yep. If you do upgrade to Office 365, I recognize that that's a limitation right now, because the accessibility features that I'm talking about and the Use What You Have, those are focused on Office 365. The challenge there is they're essentially running on Microsoft servers is what's happening. Most of the time with AI-powered services like voice transcription or image recognition, usually what's happening is it's taking a snapshot of the data, uploading it to that company's servers, it's processed there, and then the result is sent back to you really quickly. A lot of people don't realize this is what happens with voice assistants on your phones. So you've probably noticed there's a little bit of a delay when it comes to your Google Assistant, or if you're using Siri on your iPhone. Usually what's happening is it's taking a quick snippet of that audio, uploading it to the servers, it's processed and sent back to you, which is where the delay comes from, because there is a little bit of upload and download there. So these 365 features are typically only available if you're using a 365 contract. But there are three things that I really love. One is an app called Seeing AI that you can point your phone at something and it gives you an idea of what you're looking at. And it's a great tool for the blind and visually impaired, but I also love using it for something called Scenes, which is an analysis of whatever it thinks it's looking at. And the cool thing is you can upload images into the app for analysis with Scenes, which means if I'm really struggling to figure out what am I going to write for alt text for an image, then I can actually use Seeing AI for a little bit of help and inspiration, since it generates a really short description of what it thinks the image is. I know we mentioned the audio transcription in Word last week, so I won't really go into that, but I did include the video here again. I loved being able to upload audio for a video into there, have it transcribed, have it pick up multiple speakers. That in particular was a really revolutionary feature to me, that could identify different speakers in the actual transcript itself. It made creating transcripts and subtitles much, much faster for us. But the third that I really wanted to point out, in case you have access to it, is live captioning in PowerPoints, because it can do an extra thing that folks don't always realize. So I do have a random PowerPoint slide here, and this is the desktop app, but this is connected to a 365 account. And the display is always so tiny on here. There's an option called always use subtitles. It's slightly different if you're on the PC version, but it works the same way. And essentially what this does is I'm going to go ahead and start presenting this. And in the bottom right corner for just a second, it said listening and like red text. And once I start talking, it actually does a really decent job of figuring out what I'm saying, as long as I'm speaking clearly and at a normal pace. And even when I speak a little bit faster, sometimes it does a really good job of keeping up with what I'm saying. You can see that it had a little mistake there, but that's because I was deliberately trying to make it fail. One thing that I think is really interesting is it will also correct itself as it learns more and more about the context of the sentence. So you'll sometimes see it go back and change a word based off of something that I've said earlier. So if you can't see those captions at the bottom of the screen, I do apologize, but hopefully they are showing up for you. Now, that's actually where I was going to go next. So Ashley was asking, how does it handle non-native speakers? You can control in the subtitle settings your spoken language, and there are quite a few here that, unfortunately, the core ones are Chinese, English, French, German, Italian, and Spanish, but there are multiple languages that are in preview right now for the speaker. One thing that I find to be really interesting is, in addition to the subtitles, you can change the subtitle language. So it's not just auto captioning what you say, but you can also have it caption while translating into a different language. And this part is obviously not going to be perfect. If I were to change this to, let's say, Spanish here, and I'll go ahead and start this back up. The first word or two usually is not that great, but right now, as I'm speaking, it's trying to figure out, A, what am I saying, but then also translating it into its best attempt at Spanish. And I unfortunately am not a Spanish speaker, so I'm not sure how accurate this is or is not, but I'm assuming if they've launched this feature that it's probably close enough that folks would get the general idea if they were native Spanish speakers.
Actually, it's pretty good.
Oh, excellent.
Very precise. Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm really happy to hear that. Here, I'll go ahead and exit out of this. But that's one of the things that I really love about it. It's really easy to miss this feature. They didn't do a huge rollout for this to say, hey, we have this new thing, but this does exist. This is in the desktop version of PowerPoint that I was using, but it's also in the online version of PowerPoint. And I want to point out, even if you're not on Office 365, I'm trying to remember how their licensing works, but I know that you can sign up for your own free Microsoft account that does include PowerPoint Online. And I think this feature comes with it. It may be restricted to Office 365 accounts, like paid accounts. I'm not quite sure there, but you could always give it a shot to see. And it's just one of those little things where activating this during a PowerPoint slideshow could make things a bit more accessible to everyone, and not just accessible in the accessibility context, but also in the language context, which I find to be really, really powerful. So please do review those. Amy's also added in some information here about making things like infographics, charts, and images a bit more accessible. And later in the course, we do have 2 quick statements from folks who live with day-to-day impairments, talking about what accessibility means to them. One is from Jamie, who is one of our colleagues, and one is from Nathan Todd, who is an accessibility advocate, and who had shared a brief statement with us about what accessibility means to him. And at that point, I recognize I kind of breezed off of the Microsoft setting and over to this really quickly, but Amy, would you feel comfortable hopping in a second or two to talk about the capstone project?
Absolutely. All right. So we have your capstone project is up there and it's ready. Michael, do you want me to share out screen?
Oh yeah, here, I'll go ahead and turn off the
right.
share.
Let me do this. All right. Now there's a couple of other like housekeeping items that I want to address also. There have been lots of reports that people weren't able to edit their courses. And I thought, so strange. We were in there editing last week until last night when I came in and I could not find the course management panel, which made things difficult for me to edit some things. I could turn editing on and off, and each of you should be able to do the same up here with this toggle button at the top to turn your editing on and off to add things. However, if you were finding that you couldn't change in your Sandbox courses things like your course settings or format, that is here under the course management cog, which had disappeared in the process of us doing some theme work. Every so often that happens, but we brought it back today, so that is there. Speaking of our capstone project, though, I'm going to hop right down to that section. The capstone project is set up as an assignment activity, and all of the information that you need right here is right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to click and enter this Biology 101 course, and you're all enrolled in there, and that course is now visible. And you're going to go into that course and you're going to look for accessibility problems, things that don't seem to be built with accessibility in mind, accessibility errors, any of those things, or instances where the design is not inclusive of all learners. You're going to pick 3 items that you've identified, and you're going to type those, just tell us what those 3 items are. That can be a bulleted list. Then you're going to choose one of those items. And you're going to tell us how you would revamp or rebuild that item to make it accessible. So you're going to go to this biology course, find 3 errors, tell us what they are and why they're an error, and then pick one of those and tell us what you would do to fix that issue. You can submit this as a document attachment, or you can type right into a text box that will come up when you come in to add your submission. You have 30 days to complete this capstone project. In order to earn the badge for this course, you will have needed to have participated in the forums that we had, visited some of the different activities, and also complete this capstone project. So those things need to be done in order for you to earn the badge for the course. And when you click to enter that biology course, you are going to come into a course that looks just like this, and you'll be able to go through this course and view it and look at the different activities and things in here, and use that as your course that you're finding the accessibility issues with. So that is how the capstone works. We're going to grade that on a rubric. In order to pass the capstone, you'll need to have achieved an 80%. You do get extra chances. So if something goes terribly wrong and we reach out to you and say, hey, you didn't achieve the minimum score, no worries. You will have an opportunity to revise that if you need to. As Michael mentioned, this course will remain open for 30 days. This supplementary course called Biology 101 will also remain open for 30 days, giving you 30 days to complete your capstone. And any questions during that time, you can reach out to us directly. Ashley, yes, it's aligned with WCAG 2.1 AA or higher. So because that Brickfield accessibility toolkit is actually now part of Moodle 3.11 core. It's a core feature in there where you can add it. And that version of Moodle is also WCAG compliant. Brickfield is as well. And that's just my little insider scoop because I asked the same question of Gavin on a meeting recently when I was speaking with him somewhere else. And I said, it's not on the site. And he said, yes, it is. So that is the information there about the capstone project. Remember that you'll find it here right in that capstone project section, and you can enter into the assignment to find the criterion, and this link will take you directly to that biology course. Also opening today is the conclusion. So the conclusion section of the course is where you can leave us your feedback. We do really value this feedback. It's important for us to know what you thought of the course, whether or not we met your expectations, and any suggestions you have going forward. Even though we build the courses and we facilitate them, every time we come on a webinar or do a course, we learn something new while we're here. And we want to make sure that we are paying that forward, that we're taking those things and we're building even better courses going forward. There's also information here about how to connect your Badger backpack. So how to go and create a Badger backpack, connect it to the site. So when you earn the badge, you can take it with you. And how to back up that Sandbox course. So if you've been working in your Sandbox course and you want to take that with you, all of the instructions about how to back up that course and take it with you are right here down in the conclusion section. That's it for me. That's what I've got.
All right. And with that, we just wanted to check in, see if anyone had any questions we could be helpful with.
Just a quick question, just to clarify. On the custom project, we once we identify one problem, we just tell you what is the proposed solution, or do we actually have to solve the problem and send that presentation with for example, if I identify a video doesn't have subtitles, for example, so should I just mention that the problem should be addressed including subtitles, or do I have to include actually the subtitles in the video?
That's a great question. So Johnny, you just have to give us your suggestion. You don't have to actually do the work, but you might tell us, how would you subtitle that? Would you create a transcript and add it? Would you load captions? Would you use something like YouTube where auto captions can be generated? So just tell us what you would do to fix it. You don't actually have to go ahead and fix it.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. That was a great question. Go ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, so one of the things, I've actually used Ally before in a different learning management system, and like we realized it was really it was good at like remediating some content, and then it was really terrible at other things. And so my question with Accessibility and Brickfield and all of these kind of tools is like, can they tell you like if a video doesn't have captions, or can they tell you that the captions are like 80% accurate or something? Do you know what I mean? So like a lot of them run on AI, and I guess my question is like, some issues are easy to flag, right? Because they can uncover a problem in the code, but especially with multimedia, it's like how accurate is their assessment of the accessibility of those kinds of things? And then like in the 4Cs, the last C is really important. It's consistency, right? And that's something that I don't think comes through immediately in an accessibility checker. Like it can tell you if you're not using headers, but it won't necessarily tell you like, in this section you organize things this way, and in this one you organized it a different way, and that could be confusing. So I guess my bigger question is like, how much is it like useful to rely on some of these like the automated things, and like where is it more useful to actually have a human reviewing stuff for accessibility?
Right. So our approach is we never rely on any one thing, right? So we don't pick any one tool and say that that's going to do it for us. It's one of the reasons we brought in the instructional design principles, because consistency comes out of which of the design approaches you take. It's one of the reasons that I choose the backward design method, which I talked about, but there are reasons that people choose ADDIE for the same exact purpose. I can create this template of this is how things go, and it's going to go this way for every week. And so some of designing for accessibility comes not from using a tool, but from honing your own practice and understanding that the consistency really only comes from you. There isn't something that's going to check for that because of the nuances in titling and laying things out, and how an assessment may be different from week to week. So it really comes down to pairing several things. I like the accessibility checker because I can come in as a different persona, come in as someone with ADHD, look at this with someone who has a photosensitive neurological consideration or things like that. And then I can start to bring that back into my instructional design practice. Like, okay, you kept doing this, but this is a really bad idea. So let's make a note on that as we're moving forward. Ally does a more, what is exactly on the course page review, less, I find it to be a little less comprehensive than the Brickfield piece, which drills in a little bit further. As far as reading the captions, unless and I don't even know if Brickfield does this, I'll have to ask Gavin, but when you put up a video and you are using something like YouTube, the captions get loaded and then it's included in, so it's not viewed as a separate file. So then none of the accessibility checkers check that. Auto captioning on YouTube is iffy at best. I think they said somewhere between 40 and 60% accurate, much of which depends on how the AI there is trained, doesn't take accents into account very well, it completely cannot handle any type of speech impediment, impairment, low tone in the mouth, nothing that is not exactly like the AI would have, is perceiving it to need to be said. So I would say that captioning is the biggest issue. What I do for that, though, is I do my human review on my captions. I tend to like to have them as a transcript that I go through and I review a couple times to make sure that they're accurate and they make sense. And then I'll upload them as a captioning file if I need to do that, or I just put them in as a transcript. But there really is no one software that replaces those things that you bring to the table. That I know that this is how the captions should lay out, and it's not. But the hope is that as time goes on and software is developed a little bit differently, because some of it depends on how the captions and things like that are included into the video. The hope is that some of these accessibility tools will be able to tease out that captioning file and give you some information there. But I just don't think technology-wise we're there yet to be able to match up the video track with the audio track and make sure everything is matching as it should be.
Yeah, and even captions are sort of minimal at this point because you also need audio descriptions in a video. Like if there's music playing in the background, like you need to be able to describe what that is. So yeah, cool.
And it's one of the things, like I tend to avoid music in the background. I know lots of people include it because they feel like it helps to create like a mood and reduce distraction. But for me, music in the background is super distracting. Like I will focus on that over anything in the video. And I loved how you said, I don't watch videos. Like I just don't. And I was on a call yesterday and I had to set something up and they're like, well, we sent all these instructions. And I was like, it was like 10 pages. Give me 5 bullet points about what I need to do, because I'm not going to be able to get through all of that. And I think, when I put video up, I always try to think too, like, what if somebody doesn't like watch videos? Is there a way I can put like a quick, like the Cliff Notes version of something out there? How do I make it really short? And all of that comes into accessibility. And it's, in the end, whatever design principle you apply, you have to apply it not just through your lens, but through the lens of all of your different potential users. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle for instructional designers to get past sometimes. All right. See, Kathy has her hand. Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, I'm going to push back a little bit on that because I think that in some cases, I know that when I'm doing instructional design, I'm very intentional about the media that I choose. And it may very well be that I'm choosing to use a video because there are nuances that are important to catch. Like, for example, if I'm doing a video on, let's say, interaction with a client or with maybe someone with a disability, then there's a lot of nonverbals that are going to be part of that that are in the video for a reason. And so, and that would be why to use the video. And so in that circumstance, I would definitely, yes, you do have to provide, like a transcript, because not everyone can see that video. But reading something like, Bill says hello and shoots an evil glance at so-and-so is not the same thing as noticing that evil glance. And so, it's like we do have to, first of all, I think there's a difference between accessibility necessities and preferences. I mean, I prefer to read a transcript too because it's faster, and particularly of narration. I'm more likely to watch a video. I'd rather not listen to narration, but sometimes there's a reason for it, and sometimes you just have to buck up and watch the video if you're able to.
Right. And I think that what we were getting at was that the video that Ashley was talking about in my example are with them something is purely content, like a video of a PowerPoint or something. I'm
Right.
more likely to just read a transcript. However, particularly when we talk about hybrid and remote learning, and we aren't able to recreate anything in real time, we really need people to understand the social and tonal nuances of something. Absolutely, video and audio are going to be the way to do that. It's the only way. As we know, written people interpret written things differently. So, a hostile hi Bob is not the same as me reading it in a happy mood. I'm thinking, oh, look at how nice this guy is saying hi Bob. I agree. There's definitely a place for things like video. And then, as you mentioned, just having the transcript, making sure that you're able to convey what those social and tonal nuances are to people. But sometimes there are things that I just am not going to, if it's just purely content and I can read it more quickly and that works better for me, I tend to like having that. But there are definitely things that I have to have video for. Good example, when I'm doing home repair, if you wrote all of those steps out, no way would I be able to follow that because I need to actually see someone do it for it to make sense for me. So, and I think it brings up a really important point, Kathy, which is that you, each individual learner for every individual bit of content may need to approach that content a little bit differently. There is no one size fits all. I can just speak for myself and think there are certain things that I'm fine just hearing them. And then there are other things that I have to see a video for. There's no walking through the steps. I can't organize them, particularly things that need to be visual or experiential. I have a hard time organizing the written into how that all plays out. So I think that what you get at is a really important point, which is that there isn't always a way to fully replace something. So even if I couldn't see a video, I could definitely pick up on the tonal nuances in that conversation, and that's going to be a good indicator for me. So yeah, so I'm glad that you shared that. That's really important for people to remember.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and I feel the same way, particularly about like when they try to show you how to do an exercise with a diagram.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't, I don't know how you get from, picture A to picture B. And so unless I can see it actually played out, I can't
Mhm.
replicate it.
Yeah, that's a great example too. The diagrams always look like Twister to me, and I don't know what's happening because I can't figure out where the hands are, and
Mhm.
and that's an excellent example of that. And that is further reinforced for a lot of places when you join a gym and you look at the equipment, it has all of those diagrams, but usually when you join a gym, they do an orientation with you to begin with because the diagrams don't really work for everybody. And so they make sure that they kind of cover that by coming and do an actual demonstration or having you demonstrate, use the equipment the appropriate way. So that's a good example of, how that sort of plays out too, like in everyday life. Great.
Yeah.
All right. So Michael and I will hang out for another minute or so. We have used up just about the full hour today, which is fantastic. Be sure to check in to the Accessibility in Design course. We'll be in there. You'll see us more active over the next week or so. We'll still be here if you need anything. And you'll see me there's one thing I do want to add into that biology course. The biology course that you're going to go into is not our original course where all of the accessibility issues happened. That one was actually, we broke the course we wanted to use so good that we couldn't even restore it on the site. Like the site wouldn't take the course. It was such a bad example of design. So we have this backup course. So there's one element that I am going to add in a little bit. You'll notice that it's going to go down in the photosynthesis category, but you'll see it there. If you have any questions about the content that's come, it is a good, bad example. So if you have any questions at any time, please reach out to us. Again, this is open for 30 days and you can work on content then. If you get to the end of the 30 days and you have found that life has happened and you were not able to complete the course, please just reach out to us. We understand fully how easily things can get away from you. If you need an extension, just let us know. All right. And if you're done, thank you so much for joining us for this course. We have really learned a lot here, which has been great. And it's been wonderful to hear people's different experiences and ideas and examples of things. And we really appreciate that you were here and joined us for this course.